Okay, we're set. So now we're actually going to start. This week we're going to be doing the 5 best comps to climb on the new patch. So the new patch, it dropped yesterday, it's January 10th. So after 1 day of playing, we've already established the best borderline, basically OP overpowered comps. Good comps to play if you don't hit those, and then some comps to avoid. So as I was mentioning, we have our coaching one-on-one sessions and program online now. Well, technically not online, it's on our Discord channel. So if you are interested in that, please check out the Discord channel and scroll down to the one-on-one coaching if you are interested in some good coaching. Without further ado, let's get into it. So we'll be talking about 5 different comps today. Before even all that, we'll talk about a brief intro to the major system changes that have been applied. If you are looking to see like the full in-depth major system changes, please see our last week video, or technically it's on last Monday, so check out that video. It was like the patch 14.1 like preview. But for those who haven't seen that and just want to know like briefly, I'll just talk about that for a little bit, and then we'll go into our comps. Disco TF and Pentakill Karthus are rampaging and taking over not only the North American ladder but the international ladder. So these comps are extremely good. I'll explain why they're back in meta, because they're not new comps, they're just like revamped comps. Twitch Vex is a little bit of a new comp. I'll talk about what are the scenarios to play this in, and you can't just play it regularly, so I'll talk about why and when you'll be playing Twitch. And then our rerolls, we have Yone and Riven. There is also Country, but Country is a little bit more niche and a lot more expensive, so I'll talk about that as well. And then finally talk about some cons that are no longer S tier. Some of them are still playable, but others such as Jax I no longer recommend. All right, 5 best comps to climb on patch 14.1, our beautiful thumbnail. Okay, major system changes. So the 2 main things, I'll just take like a minute, is the open fort changing. So if both players were to face each other and both are open, both will take the player damage or stage damage, and their streaks are reset to 0. So this discourages open forting, and there's very little open forting now. It's better to play 1 unit and at least win against an open forter than to both have your streaks reset and have no gold. The second part that has been implemented is the streaks change. So as you see over here on the right, now the streaks have been pushed 1 more in order to gain that gold. So there's no longer 2-3 streaks, it's now 3-4, and then instead of 2 gold for a 4 streak, it's now 5 streaks in order to get 2 gold. And then last but not least, in order to get your 3 gold, you need to be on a streak of 6. So this is pretty insane. That means for stage 2, you could only be able to get 2 gold from a 5 streak, and that means 3-1 is going to be actually very important, because that is your first opportunity to get your 3 gold. So this is a brief discussion about the major system changes, and then we're going to get into the composition. So the first one, Disco TF. As you can see at the very top, we have an infinite amount of buffs. We'll start with the actual comp first. So as you can see, Twisted Fate, the attack speed required to get his 1 bonus card as he throws has been halved, which means that now attack speed was always good on him, but now attack speed is even better on him. I'll talk about how that influences our itemization. Next, Nami. So Nami used to be basically an unclickable unit last patch, but now she's very good. A 15 mana reduction buff, so that is really good. Now it's only 4 autos to attack with Shojin. A little bit of a stun nerf, that is fine. And also her mana lockout is removed, so now you can put a lot of attack speed on her. Rage Blade Disco Nami early is actually very good, and that Rage Blade can transition easily to Twisted Fate later, which I'll talk about in a second. The next big buff we have is for Ziggs. So same thing, a couple patches ago, we had our chosen Ziggs on level 9, and that just was almost an insta-win, and then Ziggs got gutted. Now he is almost back. He has his attack speed increased and his small bomb damage increased as well, but actually sizable amounts. So Ziggs is pretty good too, and of course all of these units that I'm talking about are in the Disco TF comp. And then last but not least, we have our big changes to Rabadon's death cap. So minus 10 AP, but plus 12% bonus damage is a crazy trade-off, crazy positive that is. So Rabadon's death cap is extremely good now almost on all AP carries. I would say basically all AP carries. And then Gunblade also got a 580 and AP buff. So we're looking at a plethora of buffs here. We'll talk about the actual comp now. So Disco TF, this is front to back. This is magic damage, with our main source of damage being our Twisted Fate. And then Sona just influencing the whole board with attack speed and on hit damage. Because this is a scaling like stall comp where where the longer the fight goes on, the more attack speed we will get from the disco balls, and hence the more damage and the more cast we do. We really need a strong front line. So this is our Blitzcrank 2. We gotta make sure we have 3 full tank items on him. So like a Warmog, Steadfast Heart, Crown Guard, extremely good. Ionic Spark got a buff as well, so now it gives you like flat 200 HP just from the item, which is insane. So Ionic Spark is also good on Blitzcrank. If you don't have your Ziggs, of course, if you have your Ziggs shreds, and you no longer need magic resistance shred. So something to note is this composition is heavily contested. This means that you will basically have a really hard time hitting this on 4-5 because many Blitzcranks will be out, many Twisted Fates will be out. Remember, there's only 10 of the 10 copies of each 4-cost unit. So I highly recommend that we establish this board on 4-2. We level to 8, we roll down for our chosen Twisted Fate or our chosen Blitzcrank, Disco preferably. If it's the Dazzler edition, then it will be playing 4 Dazzler and 5 Disco, and Sentinel Blitzcrank does not fit in this comp very well. There is some form, we need some form of shred, so as I mentioned, either Spark or Ziggs or even just like a Shiv on Sona. And then last but not least, this board already is very stable on level 8 on stage 4. However, going into stage 5, we need to be capping out around a legendary. So this is our Alawi 2, Ziggs 2, Sona 2, and then we'll be good to go from there. So extremely good comp. It is very contested right now, but it's just so strong. Twisted Fate does an incredible amount of damage. You have tank, you have scaling. Only thing this loses to actually is fast-paced comps, which we'll talk about near the end of the video. Hint, that is like Yone and Riven. Okay, our next one is Pentakill Karthus. Once again, we just look at the number of buffs. So Karthus actually, some of his like stats got nerfed. So 10 mana nerf starting, and also 1 target down. However, his damage has been increased an insane amount. So what basically they're trying to do here is, instead of Karthus doing like a mediocre amount of damage to like 5 units, he is basically now going to one-shot all 4 units that he hits, which is really good. Along with the AP item changes, it's just insane. Viego also got a buff on his actual slam, so his slam will do more damage because he has a higher AD ratio. And then Jewel Gauntlet, which we will be using on Karthus as opposed to Twisted Fate, who doesn't really want this item. It gets a 5 AP buff, and hey, 5 AP is 5 AP, and as I mentioned a lot, stats are multiplicative in this game, so it will synergize with your crits, and yeah. So these are the buffs. As opposed to the Twisted Fate comp, this is a back to front comp. So instead of hitting the enemy frontline first, and then once the frontline is dead, we move on to the backline, we are going to be hitting the enemy backline first, and then killing their frontline tanks once their damage is gone. So this is a really hard comp to beat if you are a backline carry, because of our multiple carries that have AoE or just backline target access. So number 1, star of the show, Karthus. Number 2, second star of the show, Viego. And then last but not least, are Akali. So all 3 have some form of AoE or like backline access, and it's very hard for backline carries such as a Twisted Fate to survive. Same thing, this board is extremely contested. I highly recommend the latest you should be establishing this board is on 4-2, so stage 4 round 2, you'll be leveling to 8 and rolling down. Ideally for your Viego chosen, the reason being is because the Superfan item for Karthus is, you will be playing Superfan on this board most of the time. Superfan item on Karthus is Archangels, which is not a bad item on him. However, I think Shojin, Jewel Gauntlet, and Rabadon's is better. The reason being is you used to want Archangels on Karthus because like on the second cast, he'll kill the backline. With these new items and his buff to his damage, he doesn't need a second cast. He'll just one-shot the backline from the first cast. So that's the reasoning. And then you'll be getting a Titan on Viego. Make sure you give him some healing once he is your chosen, Pentakill chosen, and you're good to go. It's a very, oh sorry, this should not be on the slot here. You want to be positioning Akali on the opposite side of the enemy carry, so it's pretty simple. Let's say like this is the first option, well then you would want to put Akali like here, even like here in the front row if she has healing, and then vice versa. If if the enemy carry is here, then you'll be wanting to put Akali on the left side. So make sure it's opposite side, and she will jump and do a bit of damage. Put the enemy carry into the Karthus execution range, and then Karthus will execute them. Last but not least, you don't necessarily need Shred in this composition. The reason being is 2 out of 3 of your main carries are actually physical damage. So Viego and Akali do physical damage. And then also it's pretty overkill. The fact that Karthus basically one-shots enemy backlines with this build, 7 Pentakill, like on the first cast, along with maybe Viego hits them as well, gives your team like extra damage, like deal bonus damage to that target that Viego ulted, and then Akali is also jumping to them to deal damage. It's just overkill. Honestly, I even think like Sunder is better in this comp, which you'll get from York anyway. So yeah, just focus on these items. Akali, she preferably wants a spat for 7 Pentakill. You can fit this on level 8, and this is going to be chain plus spat, and then Pentakill Akali is super good. So these are the 2 main comps right now. As you might have noticed, they're both basically like AP oriented, although there are some like physical damage from Viego and Akali. So yeah, the 2 really good comps right now stabilize around a 4 cost on level 8 on 4-2, and yeah, I highly recommend these 2 for this upcoming patch. Okay, we're getting a little bit more into the niche comps now. So this third one is Twin Terror of Twitch/Vex. Almost a little bit of a newer comp, but it has been gaining a lot of popularity recently. If you might have noticed, it looks very similar to old Double Trouble. Twin Terror is basically just like Double Trouble with different stats. Now there's like crit instead of just like flat stats across the board. So we will be playing 2 Pantheons, 2 Amumus. Well, depends which one we hit. Sometimes we hit both, sometimes we only hit one. But we will always be playing 2 Twitches and 2 Vexes. The reason why this comp is even better this patch is Emo 2 got a buff, so now Vex will be gaining 20 mana every time an ally dies. And I actually believe it's both Vexes, so that's very good. 40 mana in total every time an ally dies is super good. Pantheon gets a little bit more damage reduction based off of his AP, and then Twitch is altered to no longer do as much damage from his AP ratios, which is his secondary shard explosions when he throws his cask, but instead he does more physical damage from the actual initial cast of his cask. So basically it's about the same. You're not really building AP on Twitch anyway. It didn't really make sense. He's more of a physical damage dealer. So the fact that they increase his physical damage attack damage ratio is super good. So buffs, very good. The one scenario you will be playing this composition is with Twin Terror, as you might have guessed. This is either the gold or the prismatic. Obviously the prismatic is better, but if you have the gold version, it is still fine to play as well. The way you'll be playing this is you will be getting Twitch Executioner chosen on level 6. Punk is not good. You could play Punk for a couple turns and then like sell it after a neutral round and then roll again for the Executioner chosen. The reason being is eventually we want to get 4 Executioner in, and that will be our big spike in the late game. Once we have hit the Twitch Executioner chosen headliner on level 6, we want to be 3-starring our Pantheon and our Twitch. And then once that has been done, or at least we've 3-starred the Twitch and maybe we're like 2 off Pantheon, we could start looking to go level 7 and looking to 3-star our Vex and our Amumus. On level 7, we'll add either a Pantheon or Vex depending on who is itemized. So if you have like more items for Vex, then sure, play another Vex. Or sorry, if you have items on your original Vex, then you could play another Vex. If you have more of your items on Pantheon, then you'll play another Pantheon. So depending on who's itemized, you'll add in the second version on level 7, and then eventually we'll be going level 8, putting in 4 Executioner. And it depends. If we have a 3-star Amumu, then we'll just play a second Amumu. If we have a 3-star Pantheon, we'll just play a second Pantheon. Okay, and then very last thing I want to mention is for positioning, Twitch and Vex, you want to put in front of the largest clump. And when I mention these Twitch and Vex, it's going to be the main ones, so the 3-star ones you want to be putting in front of the largest enemy clump, especially if it is a melee carry such as a Yone or a Riven. They will blow it up and basically one-shot us off of their first cast. I see a question here. Will this comp ever play Executioner Vex over Twitch? Yes, you can. You could, yeah, it's definitely possible to hit Executioner Vex on level 6. There's a lower chance for a 3 cost, but it is still possible. The thing with that though is you're going to spike a lot later. Reason being is hitting Vex 3 is a lot harder than Twitch 3, and you'll be kind of stuck like rolling for Twitches and Vexes, but then like your main Vex is, you see what I mean? It's like I would recommend just going for Twix Executioner. It makes things a lot simpler. However, you are still able to do Executioner Vex if you have the items immediately for her on stage 3. Yeah, but honestly, it's not too big of a difference. It makes it a little bit tougher, but I think it's okay. Next question on this. If you hit Twitch and you're far from Pantheon, maybe better to push levels for Mumu and Vex. Exactly, yes. So that's what I was trying to say over here. Like, you ideally want to 3-star both, but sometimes that's not the case. And then if you have a 3-star Amumu instead, then you'll just play a second Amumu instead of the Pantheon. And I actually made a mistake earlier. On level 7, you can play both. And what I meant to say was, like, if you had the 3-star Amumu, then you wouldn't play the second Pantheon, you play the second Amumu, and then like your 4th Executioner. And then vice versa, if you have a 3-star Pantheon, then just play your second Pantheon and then the 4th Executioner. Most of the time, you will not be playing 2 Amumus or 2 Pantheons. Okay, great questions. So I'm going to move on to the next comp now. I think all of this has been cleared up. Okay, Yone is back. Extremely good comp. Although 6 Crowd-Diver did get nerfed, and Kiana actually got nerfed by a lot, other units within the comp got buffed. So as you may have remembered from our Pentakill slide, Viego is getting a buff, or he has been buffed. His slam does more damage. Mordekaiser also got a buff, like a small buff, and Kale also got a buff as well. So buffs from other units. And these units are actually now very good. The way we want to be playing Yone is rolling for Yone Headliner on level 7, and then you want to slow roll for Yone 3. Ideally, Crowd-Diver is the +1 trait you want to be getting. However, there are some cases if you're either like low on gold, or even you're contested, or you're just like running out of time, you'll take the other 2. Edgelord being the second best, and then Heartsteel, of course, being the worst. Best in slot Yone is pretty subjective. I would almost go Infinity Edge Hodge every game, and then the last item, it really depends either on your augments or on the lobbies. Edge Knight used to be a must playing against these Ari boards, but now Titans I think may be better because against Twisted Fate you will not be getting one shots, so instead you'll like kind of drain tank the Twisted Fate damage and be able to scale really hard from there. But Infinity Edge, Hodge +1, either Titans, BT, Edge of Knights. If you have Gargantuan Resolves, then you'll be going double Titans and BT. The core for this is Kale, Yone, Mordekaiser, Viego, Zed +2, depending on your chosen. Your +1. Most of the time it's going to be Crowd-Diver, or like ideally it's Crowd-Diver, and then you'll just add the other Crowd-Divers and fit everything on level 8. Very last thing is remember to position away from single target enemy carries. In this meta, it's basically either enemy Yasuos or the Twitches and the Vex, which technically is not single target because they do AoE. However, it's just burst. So it's a single target / burst. But however, versus the like disco boards or the Karthus Pentakill boards, you should be good to go. You could even do same side. Ideally, you do same side, unless the Twisted Fate like really like bunches up with all of his like main carries protecting him on that side. Like if it's all over here, then maybe you don't put Yone here. But against Karthus, you normally have no problem. Karthus just does not have enough damage to one-shot the Yone, and you're good to go. So that's why Yone is good right now. The next one, very similar. As you may have noticed, these two boards look pretty similar. It has the same base of like Pentakill and Edgelord. Second one is Riven Reroll. There has been a buff to 8-bit, so the AD stacks, or the AD per stack, has been increased. So just more AD, and then of course AD is good. Same thing with Yone. You want to be rolling on level 7 for that Riven Headliner plus the Riven 3. Ideally, you get 8-bit. It's very easy to play 4 8-bit in this case because you have the +1, and the main thing is you don't have to play Corki, which is great. No offense to Corki. And then best in slot for Riven is going to be Bloodthirster, Quicksilver +1. It's either Titans or Giant Slayer, of course, depending on the lobby. So a little bit different itemization than Yone. Reason being is Yone is a drain tank that is ability based. Of course, his auto attacks still do damage. However, his main like damage burst comes from his ability where he slashes twice and is able to like heal all the way back up and basically one shot what he's hitting. Riven, on the other hand, her main damage source comes from her auto attacks because she'll cast, get a shield, and then her next like auto attacks for the 6 seconds will do AoE. So she's auto attack based, hence why QS and immunity to crowd control is imperative on her. And then last but not least, remember, position away from single target enemy carries so you don't get bursted right away. Okay, I see a question. It seems like Mord will be contested a lot. Is there any other tank you use as a substitute? Unfortunately not. In these two comps, it will be just Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser will be holding your tank items. This is tank items in this case are like pure tank items, not aura tank items. So this is like your Crown Guard, your Warmogs. I would not make, I guess the Gargoyle is okay, I got buffed as well, but the fact is like there's so many melee units, you're not really getting the Gargoyle's value like of everyone attacking Gargoyles. But this is your main tank items that you'll be putting on Mordekaiser. Your aura items will be going on Viego, so things like your Even Shroud, your Morello, stuff like that. So those are like quote-unquote tank items, but they're more like aura items. And then yeah, Mordekaiser will also be played in the Pentakill board. So yeah, Mordekaiser is a very contested unit, hard to hit, but the thing is, most of the time, if you're very rich, you will be looking for this board or the Riven board on 3-5, right? Worst case scenario 4-1, and if you notice, like from the Pentakill board, they're going to be establishing on 4-2, so there's a chance, or there will be like an opportunity for you to roll first and hopefully like hit your Mordekaisers first, and then even better, the Pentakill players will have a harder time to hit Mordekaiser once they roll a turn later or like 4 turns later. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, I think that is it. Riven Reroll was the last composition, so I'll just do a final notes here. Comps that are no longer S tier. So EDM Jax was insane last patch. Not only has, well, I guess technically the Jax damage was reverted, so Jax remains the same. However, the EDM effectiveness at 5 has been reduced, and the timing, the frequency has been increased by a duration of 1 second. So EDM Jax is just no longer as good. The jumps, or like everyone jumping does less damage, and they jump less frequently. So overall DPS is just down. Don't recommend Jax anymore. Probably like B tier. I'm not sure, I haven't tested it. Next one is Sentinel Ahri. Although the nerfs weren't too hard, it's more so that the counters to this comp were buffed. So right, Ahri nerf, it went from 0.8 to 0.75 for attack speed, and then Sentinels lost like 10 armor and 10 magic resist. Not a big deal, right? However, like Yone, or not Yone, sorry, Twisted Fate got buffed, and Ahri isn't necessarily like, Ahri is a stall comp that doesn't really get like that much stronger over time, apart from like Spellweaver. However, Twisted Fate is a stall comp that really gets stronger over time, so it basically just gets outscaled, and eventually you lose to TF boards. And then Sentinel Ahri, there wasn't really like backline access last patch that was being used, and Sentinel Ahri is just one carry in the back, and now there are Karthuses, there's Akalis jumping around, there's Viegos jumping around, so it just cannot survive. So those two are gone. True damage, the spat bling bonus has been removed, so we're no longer true damage spatting our Caitlyn. It will still do true damage, however the bling bonus of the extra percentage bonus damage that a unit gets when a true damage spatula is put on them is removed. So true damage is not as good as it was before. I still think like 6 true damage is okay. I'd probably put it in like B tier, maybe A tier. but definitely not S anymore. And then last but not least, just general 80 flex. I think the only scenario you should be playing 80 flex, okay, maybe not only scenario, has not been tested, is like the 5 Heartsteel version. So then that way you're still able to like make your econ, like go level 9, you play like a strong Ezreal board, eventually transition to like a Caitlyn 2 and like a Jhin Lucian. So very high cap, and not bad. I would say probably A tier. But yeah, so these are main comps that were played last patch, and now this patch are just no longer as good as they were. So I'll just sum up everything, and then we'll enter our Q&A session. 5 comps that I think are extremely good this patch: Disco, TF, Pentakill, Karthus. These are level 8 4-cost stabilized boards. Very contested, very strong. If you are able to hit, you could easily go 9 and probably win the lobby. Twitch Vex reroll, very niche. If you have the Twin Terror augments, then you can go for this this deck. And then last but not least, any form of reroll, Yone reroll, Riven reroll, Country reroll is all fine, just depending on your spot and items. So that has been all. Thank you for watching if you're on YouTube, and if you're in the voice channel, then it is time for